The Metro is the only project, Minister, mentioned by name or really kind of allocated a specific amount of money, 2 billion quid. That's kind of dropping the ocean stuff, isn't it? Why only 2 billion in this particular plan?
Yeah, so I suppose it is the only project mentioned, you're correct. And the reason for that is it's one of our flagship projects. This is a real signal to international investors, a real signal to the market that the government is absolutely committed to making this happen. And that €2 billion is going to be about starting the construction work. Obviously, it's in planning at the moment, and we'll be expecting a decision in the next 6 or so weeks. We'd like to then start construction imminently. And it's absolutely that starting point. Obviously, we've an awful lot of funding in the National Development Plan, and we have a lot gone into transport. A huge amount of money actually went into transport. It was one of the big departments that gained extra spending. So the Minister will be working to make sure that this happens over the next number of years. So
€2 billion, how much of the overall budget will that represent, do you suspect?
Of the overall Metro budget?
Yeah.
Well, we don't know because we haven't gone out to public procurement yet. So that's going to be the next phase. There's obviously funding baked in. You will have heard the Minister talk about a range earlier today, and I certainly don't want to get into specifics. I don't think that would be appropriate.
7 to 12, I think, is the range he talks about. He doesn't mention that the Department of Transport gives the upper end of that range actually is 23 billion.
Yes. And ultimately, it has to go to public procurement. So what we don't want to be doing is
we'd be mad
companies...
to spend 23 billion quid on this, wouldn't we?
Well, I think this is going to be transformational, not just for Dublin, but for the whole of Ireland. I mean, there's so many cities you go to.
23 billion
There's
euro.
so many cities you go to right across the world where you arrive and you've got really good connections immediately to get to the city centre. Dublin has good buses. There's obviously taxis as well, but we don't have that really clear...
There's lots of airports around the world, you know, that don't have dedicated rail links.
I think this is going to be transformational for Dublin. I really do. I think this is going to... It's good from a carbon emissions perspective as well. It's not going to be just tourists that use this. It's going to be people like me going to Dublin Airport who use it. I think that's going to be really, really positive.
Could you not just get the train to Clongriffin and then get a different line from Clongriffin out to Dublin Airport? There's fields, literally fields with potatoes and sheep in it. And that's not being disparaging. That's what literally is in those fields between Dublin Airport and Clongriffin.
Dublin is one of the busiest airports. One of the busiest airports. We know that it's an international
And it's managed to do that without a dedicated rail link. And you can provide one by linking to Clongriffin. 11 children's hospitals is what we're talking about possibly spending on a rail line. So firstly, we don't have the budget. We're going to go to public procurement. I think it's really important, and that's exactly what today was. It was a strong signal to investors, to the market, to companies who are going to be bidding for this business that we are serious about doing this. And that is the bottom line. What is the upper limit? What tenders would make you think, no, actually, we're not going to pay that?
I don't have an upper limit on this because this isn't my decision.
What I'm saying, you've got a view, though. I'm just asking your view. If it came back as, say, what the Department of Transport themselves acknowledged might be the upper limit, 23 billion. If it came back at 23 billion, would you think, you know what, let's do it?
I'm not going to speculate on...
Why not?
Because I don't think that's...
But you have a view. Surely you have a view. People want to hear what your view is.
Why I'm not. Firstly, because I'm not going to speculate on figures that we've come up with there. I don't think that's fair.
Including your constituents, are watching this thinking, hold on, is she saying that she might actually support 23 billion euro?
And the second reason is because we have just made it so clear today that the government is absolutely committed to making this happen. We've provided 2 billion in ring-fence funding to start construction. It's gone through planning permission. Now we're asking companies to come, and we will shortly be asking companies to come and pitch for that business. It'll be a competitive tender, and we'll see what those tenders come back with.
So no upper limit?
It's not up to me to put an upper limit on this. What I will say is that the government has today really clearly signalled that we want this project to happen, and I think it'll be transformative for Dublin and for Ireland.
Daniel, is it worth 23 billion quid?
Well, Sean Sweeney, who is heading up the MetroLink project, the man from New Zealand who's come over here to run it, has called it a nation-building project. He says he goes around the world doing these nation-building projects, and this is one of them. I certainly think that it will be transformative for Dublin, much more beyond just being a simple kind of commuter route. I think it'll transform all the parts of Dublin that are going to be along that route, and it'll extend the city out. And certainly the connection into Dublin Airport, I think, is important, although you make the point that there are other ways of doing that. But again, it's about being able to deliver it. And I think the reason that this has been the one project that has had 2 billion earmarked for it specifically in this plan is because there's concerns over being able to deliver it and being able to attract in an appropriate engineering or construction company to do it.
But when you hear talk of 23 billion, I mean, this is almost a perfect example of that sunken cost fallacy, isn't it? I mean, had at the outset somebody suggested it was going to cost 23 billion, it would have been scrapped there on the spot. But it didn't start off like that. It starts off with just a couple of billion euro. And it's easy to keep adding 1 billion. It's only an extra billion in the context of a massive budget every year. And suddenly you find yourself talking about 23 billion.
Now, 23 billion, I understand, is what's called a P95, which means that there's a 95% chance of it not happening. So it's kind of the very extreme upper range. But we can reach very extreme upper ranges when these big infrastructure projects get underway. I think if you went into every project thinking about it like that, what's the worst case scenario, you might not build anything. And that's part of the situation that we're in at the moment, is that we're somewhat paralysed and we haven't built the infrastructure that we need to. So you need to do cost-benefit analysis with these things as well, but also I think you need to be a bit brave and go and try get them done.
Right. Would your constituents be supportive of this? I can't imagine many of them using it.
Well, I think they'd be very disappointed to see that the Western Rail Corridor wasn't mentioned. The only piece of transport infrastructure that was mentioned was the MetroLink. Not a word on the Western Rail Corridor. That there are airports in the west of Ireland as well, Knock Airport and Shannon Airport. But Knock Airport getting a railway line up to Claremorris and then further on up to Letterkenny, hopefully in the future. So I think that's what will disappoint people. But really, I think it's slightly indicative of like the whole nonsense of today. Like, you know, we're talking about. We're bandying about figures. We're making it out to be this fantastic, huge announcement, and then we're talking about 2 billion. Really and truthfully, you know, 2 billion isn't where it's at anyway. You know, regardless of what figure it'll be, 2 billion isn't where it's at in terms of the
Yeah, but you'll appreciate there's a time limit on these plans. And if it's a future iteration of the National Development Plan that's going to fund it, you're not going to commit to that funding in today's plan.
Yeah, but the point is we've been talking about this for decades and the only thing that's changed is actually the cost of it. So it's not like this is like something that was like announced today and, oh my God, we have in this new National Development Plan review, this is it. It's new now, we have the MetroLink and this has never been discussed before. Like, it isn't that. We're not at that point, right? So I just find it disappointing that it doesn't mention anything kind of outside of Dublin. Do I think...
Yeah, I know we're kind of repeating a conversation we had a few minutes ago.
Do I think the Metro is a good thing? Absolutely.
In October, we're going to get those list of projects. I mean, most of your complaints are about just not knowing what the money's going to be spent on today. The Minister said we're going to be told in October. Just wait until Budget Day.
My biggest issue with this is that the additionality isn't there. So we know that in terms of health. It means that the things that were promised ain't going to happen. It also means that there isn't going to be additionality.
But a 60% increase in our health capital investment.
But we know that there's a 2.5 billion at least increase every single year. We know that you underfund all the time. You're talking about 9.2 billion, and it's 2.5 billion at least every year that is needed in order to deliver what ye promised. It wasn't what I promised.
Yeah, but some of that 2.5 billion euro is made up of current spending. Exactly. Some of the cost of providing beds is actually staff costs, which comes out of current budgets.
Yeah, but we're not talking about having a 9.2 billion isn't going to deliver what is needed in terms of what has been promised. But anyway, to go back to the Metro, if we are talking about, obviously we need to see far better public transport infrastructure. That needs to happen around the country. Absolutely. And the Metro, like in most large cities, absolutely have a Metro. But I just think it just feeds into the nonsense, to be honest, for me, of today. A glossy, shiny document without much detail. Minister,
are you confident that the additional funding provided to health, because this is an issue that right now is raised a couple of times, that will cover all of those capital projects that the government have committed to?
That's the expectation, yes. Like 60% increase now between now and where we were when we were forecasted to be at this point of the National Development Plan. That's really significant. That's going to do things like deliver new primary care centres, going to deliver new beds in our hospitals. It's also going to deliver digitalisation. It's going to start that project of digitalisation of health records. We've only seen earlier this year the launch of the new HSE healthcare app that Minister Jennifer Carroll McNeill launched. And now we're all able to get our medical card information, our European health card information on our phones. More of that is needed, and as Minister with responsibility for digitalisation, that's something I'm really keen to do.
Now, there's some
and I'm really keen to see that being provided for.
This is what I was saying. These were all the things. The 3,000 beds, the digitalisation. Like, I mean, I don't know, is it that maybe in 5 years' time we're going to have to just sit down here again, look at the next review, talk about the glossy document. Who knows, like, you know, I mightn't be here, but you can play this show and then we can look back at it and we can say, right, so did all of those things happen? But financially, it isn't going to happen. 3,000 additional beds, the digitalisation, all those things. It's just not. But look, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We won't have to watch a repeat show. We have a tracker there. It's going to be fully transparent, and the public are going to be able to log on and see exactly where all our projects are at.
Daniel?
And look, I think in some ways, the projects, we do know about the projects. We do know which ones are going to be there. There are things like the Shannon to Dublin pipeline. It's been spoken about for a long time. The Greater Dublin Drainage Project, MetroLink, we've spoken about. The elective hospitals. They are going to be the projects. They're not new projects, but they are going to be bumped up the priority list.